There we go. Now we're live.
Now we're live. Sorry. We're still working this out. So, give us some patience here. Welcome back to Top Tier Podcast. We are here today with Ben Gottfredson, and he owns and operates Big Ben's Moving and Storage. He is a storage player. He is a small business player. I'm super excited to hear all about how I always say, like, the pain is in the hold, how he's been able to hold his facilities, stabilize his businesses, and make a living as a business owner. So welcome, Ben. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me, you guys. I'm happy to be here. I've known Landon a while. It's been delightful to meet you, Daniela. Just excited to jam today.
Yeah, what I'm excited about here too is your path into self-storage is one that I mean, it's unique. Everyone's story is unique, but from a standpoint of looking at real estate in general as a passive vehicle and an active vehicle in terms of income, you did it, in my opinion, the right way, where you had your active income vehicle with your Big Ben's moving company, and then in a couple of years transitioned that into the quote unquote world of passive, which is real estate. It's not really passive, but it is in the scheme of things. Is you use your active income and your active vehicle to get into self-storage. And so, because a lot of people think, and they try and buck the trend and read Rich Dad Poor Dad, and they want to go straight into the self-storage thing or straight into real estate and buy the rentals and think that's going to get their financial freedom and that's going to be their thing. But you went active income first. Not that you had this intentional, 40-year plan that you knew exactly what you were going to do, but maybe you can start out with that, of like talking about, you started this company, Big Ben's Moving, as your active income vehicle, and how that sort of morphed into almost like a vertical integration into real estate. But I guess, was self-storage your first dip into the scene of real estate, or was it maybe single family, multifamily, or what did you do?
Yeah, great question. I mean, kind of on your first point, I believe everybody needs some sort of cash cow, right? Whether that's you're a high volume wholesaler, whether that's a service business like myself, to get really out of the rat race, I think you got to bet on yourself, and it's more active. Like you're saying, it's not as passive as real estate can be once you set up the business the right way. So my journey was setting up a really tough business, which is moving company. To do that the right way is no small task. And I was discovering real estate along the way, right? So my first experience with real estate was the frat house model. So I bought a 3-story house and put nine guys in it at $500 or $600 a month. You know what I mean? And it was crazy, but that was kind of like my first taste. And my property was appreciating. It was cash flowing. I was realizing, okay, here's what we can do. That was kind of my training wheels for self-storage, was the frat houses.
Totally.
And at the same time, my moving company, I was getting calls. Hey, we heard your great service. We'd love to hire you. And can we hire you for our storage? And I have to say, oh no, sorry, I don't have storage. So I'm kind of realizing I have this amazing lead generation for storage, and I have this passion for real estate. And that's kind of like the two things that came together.
Wow.
Interesting. Yeah. Do you, so with the fraternity co-living, that's an interesting model to start out your real estate journey in. What a headache, and potentially a headache, rather, depending, I guess, what college
did you
it's
live in them? Did you live in them?
Part-time. Okay. So I bounced around a lot. I was a bachelor at the time, right? So you got to realize I'm 23 years old. And
that's amazing.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I lived in Utah County, which is northern Utah. And then I would spend half my time there running my moving company there. And then half the week I would be in southern Utah, which is kind of where I grew up. And then I would be running the company down there. So every week I split my week in half, and I would stay half the week in one place, half the week in the other place. And that was a luxury I could do because I was a bachelor that not many people can do, but yeah, that was kind of how it started, since getting into self-storage, which was kind of the next step. That's what I've talked to Landon a lot about. I had the demand and I had the real estate basics, but I really had no mentors or coaches, or like, I don't know if I was too dumb or too prideful to like ask for help. But that's like a big nugget, I would say at this point, is like, once you realize you have the vision for something, find someone else who's doing it. And I've done that since then. But as like a 23, 24-year-old guy, like I thought I had to do it on my own. And I feel bad for my younger self, right? And so I kind of banged my head against the wall. I had to drain my life savings to buy a piece of land all by myself. I didn't know how to find a deal, right? Like I didn't know how to find an acquisition to buy an existing storage business. That was like not even in my realm of reality. So I had to buy land and develop, and I begged dozens of banks to give me the loan. And finally I got one to do it. And then like from that point, at age 25, I bought that piece of land, and that was what took me from just running the service business to, within the span of like a year or two, being a millionaire through self-storage at 25. So I was like, this is my new life's work. Like I'm going all in on self-storage here.
Interesting.
Like, right, Landon, what a risk to go, oh my gosh, I'm going to buy a piece of land and develop it. But there's a couple things here that I'm hearing that I think changed the game for you, probably specifically, Ben, and for people listening too. I'm assuming this was in your backyard.
Yes. Yeah, it's right in my hometown.
You knew the market.
Yeah.
You had a sense of the kind of lead generation you could get through your moving business, which is a super hard service-based business, BT dubs. And you were able to sort of visualize probably the possibility of like how long it would take to get your facility stabilized and rented up. And how long did that take?
Well, this one, I would probably not, we always say like plan on like a 3-year lease up. I had the building full, like they slapped together a metal building. It was full. Like that's the kind of, the timing was very fortunate. Like this was all during 2019, 2020, 21.
Oh my gosh.
You can't really give me the credit for that. Like I feel like even if it was today's market, I would still be able to lease it up. But the thing was just full. We got a good break. We did our part in the prep work, like to convince a bank to give a rookie the loan for a development is not easy, even in that market. But, the demand in Southern Utah took care of a lot of it. And so it wasn't a hard lease up. And after that, we realized like, okay, I can either do one of these deals every maybe 3 or 4 years and kind of have the whole pie to myself. And that's how I could do it. Or I could create what was now Big Storage Ventures, which is like our private equity, like our storage investing business. And that's what we decided to do. And so, it took me from age 23 to 25 or 26 to do one. And then like in the matter of a couple of years, we went from 1 to 9 and counting, just by having the abundance mindset, hiring coaches, networking, being humble, being scrappy. Like that's kind of the next realm we went into.
What I love too is it's a big message that you just said without saying it, is that determination and staying with that one thing. Because, when you started out doing the fraternity model, rent by the room, and you lived in, it would have been very easy for you to consider much lower barrier of entry to do that again and replicate that again. You're seeing success. You know how to model it. You know how to scale it at a certain capacity, at a certain level. You could have went the single family route like many do, like I've done, dude. I have multiple short-term rentals, long-term rentals, mid-term rentals, single family like guy. I thought I was going to be Airbnb dude. And then you get to a point where you're like, the same skills, the same principles, the same things that you're doing, now we can do for $2, $5, $10 million facilities that actually generate true life-changing monetary money versus your, $300-$400 a month as a long vanilla rental. And so it's cool to see, and a reminder for everyone, there's so much opportunity out there. And no matter what you do, where opportunity meets determination is what changes. It's because Ben is who he is and what he's done and what he's created in his company. developed his fortitude to continue to have success, and it just bled into a natural thing for you to do, which is really cool to see. And then consistency and staying with it for now, what is that, 6 years now, and it's bled into multiple facilities, over I think $37 million in growing of facilities. It's freaking sweet, man. It's so cool to watch. It's super inspiring for even Danielle and I sitting here we're at the grass foundations of things. We come with a ton of experience on the creative finance standpoint and commercial brokerage and all those little things, but to do what you've done and to scale it is really impressive and cool to see, and inspiring for us to have ambitions to achieve someday. And so kudos to you, man. Super cool.
Thanks. I think I always tell people, try to get to commercial real estate as fast as you can. And I feel like sometimes I, hurt people's feelings or offend them when I say that. But what I really mean is run it like a business as fast as you can. Like, even if you're doing Airbnb, single family homes, or flipping single family homes, or even just long-term hold, like, that's not what I don't mean to like say that doesn't count or that's not as good. Because you can have, I know people that, like Cam Cathcart, he's on our podcast, like, he does just single family, but he runs it like commercial real estate. And so you build out those systems and you scale. Like, if you have the commercial real estate mindset, even if it's on single family home or on commercial real estate, like we like, that's one of the biggest things is, your skill set is very scalable when it comes to real estate.
Absolutely. And so, okay, you figure out how to purchase land, develop something, and lease it out. And, I want to start to tease out, as a business owner operator, whether it was previously with your moving company. I mean, gosh, like, you were so young when you're running this business, right? When you're that young running a business, you can be so versatile. And you also can get through challenging economic times because your financial obligation is so much different than when you're older, when you hold whatever properties you hold, you have a wife, a family, all these things. And so I'm curious, regardless of your age, which was such a massive benefit. Oh my gosh. What were some of the the business challenges that you hit even really young, where you're going, just a little quick side tangent. I heard Cody Sanchez speak yesterday, and she mentioned 3 levels of entrepreneurship, which I thought was really cool. The first level is, how do I fix this? How do I fix this problem? The second level is, who can fix this problem? And the third level is, what can fix this problem? What service, what business, what equity partnership can I bring in and just completely take this problem off my back like a monkey? Just go away. You deal with it. I'll give you a piece of the company. So I'm curious for you, even early on, what were some of those things that you faced where it was like, oh my God, how the hell do I get through this?
Well, you guys, like, I kind of told the original story of, how we had a dream. We had our biggest challenge was just getting it passed with that first project. But so that was our issue with the first project. For the second project, we had a resume. So it was not that hard to get it passed with the bank because they're like, look at our first one. This is kind of a no-brainer, Mr. Bank, right? But we had other issues. So our second project was, just to paint the picture, a conversion, because I'm coached by AJ Osborne, built, we bought these warehouses and we see how, oh man, you can convert Kmart's into storage facilities. Like, let's do that with a warehouse, right? We did not realize like how hard that is and how much of a Frankenstein mess that can be, right? So this second project, like, we walked in it, we got punched in the mouth. Like, we basically had to say, okay, we're only going to be able to convert half of it. The other half, we're going to have to find a long-term tenant. Like, we're just scrambling to basically make it happen. I think it takes a lot of resilience. I think that's something that, I kind of got my fair share. Like, I earned my stripes with the moving company because that's a really people intensive, like, stressful business. So it really in the storage business that, you're kind of ready for it. But we had that deal that we had to save by adapting. Like we could have just put our head down and say, oh man, we lost, but we just had to be scrappy and adjust our plans, work with builders, run the numbers with the architects, like figure things out to make it work no matter what. We've had, like, it's crazy how like I never had a lawsuit, and then you get in business a couple of years and all of a sudden you're like, why is everybody suing me? You know what I mean? And you learn really quick, like, okay, like this is the big leagues now. And so, I would be, it wouldn't be an accurate portrait of the picture if I said that we didn't have like really hard things coming at us all the time now.
Okay. So would it be fair to say that, clearly the issues that you had as a business owner in your early 20s with service-based business, and for anyone that has ever thought about buying a service-based business across the country that you don't know anything about, you might want to come talk to Ben. It's really freaking hard. Service-based business when you're there and you're running it yourself and you're managing the sales and all the things. But the problems you had then, I can almost with certainty assume that they have become consistent and complex since that era for you.
Yeah, that's very accurate. I think your problems scale with you, right? Like, we love self-storage because self-storage, you're betting on the asset class, right? Like my moving company still spits out more cash, but it just takes more human management. Like our storage business, I'll explain it this way. A service business, your risk, your troubles, like they scale with you proportionally. And it's good because you're making more money, but you have more problems, right? The storage business is front loaded. So you have all your risk, all your problems, all your work is heavily front loaded at the beginning of the investment. And then it stabilizes. And that's where the long-term wealth and passive comes along. So that's why, there's pros and cons to both. I still run the moving company. I still am passionate about doing it. We have big aspirations, but to someone who, isn't wanting to do that, like there's a huge advantage into scaling a real estate business, and that you're betting on the horse, which is the real estate, not just the jockey, the people.
Love that. That's great. What's cool too is you've really hit the trifecta, it seems, in your acquisition strategies. I mean, you did it kind of backwards, to be honest with you. You did development first, then you did the gnarly thing of conversions, and then just simple acquisitions of existing facilities. So as you've scaled and grown and built your portfolio, how has that evolved in terms of your selections for your next facilities? Is it now more of a let's find them on pause and just take those over and enhance them with our systems and our things? Or it's like, hey, we're actually pretty good at the development and we can negotiate pretty good deals. We have good terms with banks. We have relationships now. We have opportunities to go that route. Or is it more the goal is to get as many facilities as possible?
Yeah, I think here's the honest truth. In working with people that are investing in storage at the highest level, they'll take, if it's a deal, they'll take
it. Yeah.
Right?
It doesn't matter.
They'll tell you, oh, stay in your buy box and don't go out of it. But then if something pops up that they're like, that's a deal, they'll just scrap their buy box right away. So I like to refer to as like a buy target, where it's like you have your bullseye, which is like what you're really going for. But anything that's even on the target at all, you would transact.
It's a win.
Yeah.
It's a win. Yeah. Yeah.
And so our goal is we want to do 80% acquisitions, 20% development. Right now we have like 3 developments going on, which is probably just better, healthier to do, maybe one development at a time, and then diversify with 80% acquisitions. For people that are new to like self-storage or real estate, obviously your acquisitions, they're going to have faster returns, less risk, less work, And the trade-off is you can force a lot more equity with developments, right? Because you're building something that if you were to buy it, you'd have to pay maybe millions more for that same thing occupied. That once it's occupied, that equity goes to you, but it just takes you years of the work. And so we're scaling out systems to continue developing, but I think a healthy ratio for us and maybe for other people too is like an 80-20. If you're going to try to do both, like if you're going to try to just specialize and maybe just do just acquisitions or just developments, scale it, because either of those businesses are scalable. But if you're going to try to do both, that's what we've landed on.
The development end, and this is why I love commercial real estate so much. And I'm such a huge proponent of trying to get business owner operators to stop leasing and purchase, right? Not because, well, also because there are so many funding mechanisms to help your business get into a commercial space, but you can house hack a commercial space. But the coolest thing about commercial is forcing appreciation. So Ben took out a XYZ loan for this amount of money to build this facility. And let's just say it's $1 million, took out $1 million. Once that facility is leased up, it's worth, what do you think the multiple is, Ben? I mean, it's significantly, or it's worth much more money.
Yeah. So so for this first one, right? So this first one is the one that we've had a chance to see like a full market cycle kind of play out, right? So it was like less than 2 mil for the land and the development. And so that was what it was. And now today it's worth conservatively, 3.5, maybe if you find someone with stupid money, maybe 5, right? So.
And how many net rentable square feet?
It's 25,000. Yeah. So.
Yeah.
So you basically have 7 figures of equity, right? And we have that. I could rattle off other stories, but like that's just one of them that you have that forced appreciation. And yeah, it's better than my old frat house model, right? Like I would invest, say I put $100,000 down, I'd get $100,000 of equity. This one I put $300,000 down, I got $1 million or $2 million of equity. So
right.
That's not every deal, right? Like we don't want to paint the picture that that's like every time, but that's the opportunity you open yourself up for. You have a higher ceiling when you're playing in that sandbox.
Yes. And when you are doing like other asset classes in commercial, if you purchase vacant, it's worth a lower purchase price. And once you get things leased up, whether it's single tenant, multi-tenant, whether it's retail, strip mall, whatever it is, you force that appreciation, which allows you to do so many different things. I mean, you can cash out refi your private money partners. You can cash out refi, pull that equity out and roll it into another investment. There's just so much more of a runway of opportunity for you. And so I would imagine that I know he kind of did it back. It seems to us like he did it backwards, Landon, but I don't know. I don't know. Maybe like getting that risk out of the way, you're going, all right, now I can just acquire and it's going to be.
Yeah. I didn't have a choice. There was no method to it. It was just like, this is the only storage deal available to me. I'm going to make it happen. So
yeah, just figured out.
Don't credit like my brains for sure. Like I have a lot of attributes. Like I have resilience, I have tenacity, but that's the other cool thing is I don't have like a computer brain. Like I pay for coaching from people who do have a computer brain. Sure. I don't need one. I can just be, I can play chess. I can be the decision maker. I'm more like the visionary. I don't have to have that, all knowing thing. And I think that gives people hope that maybe they get into these real estate communities and circles and they start hear people rattling off like, all these terms that are financial terms that really are over their head. And they think maybe I don't belong here. I would say that should my story, if anything, should give you hope that you don't have to know that. You could say, hey, can you dumb that down for me? Like explain that to me like I'm a 5-year-old and then let me make my decision, because you have gifts and talents that those people with computer brains who know all the financial literacy, they don't have those same skills that you have, or maybe the same attributes or, characteristics.
So with that same point there, Ben, I'm curious, kind of an oddball question here, because I always think about a lot of what rather you've accomplished and succeeded and failed in the process to this, from where you started to where you're at, is very much a testament to all the things you mentioned earlier, resiliency and all the things, and leveraging other people's and communities, much like Danielle and I both do as well too, in our own private communities and whatnot. But a lot of it too is who you become in the process. Like, entrepreneurship is the greatest personal development tool there is out there. So for you, I guess retrospectively thinking 6 years ago to the person who was just getting started developing and like getting going, who would you say you became in the process, or like the skills you've developed that the 6-year-old version, the 6 years ago version of you needed to become the version you are now? What are those small little things and who you became that have developed you that you're, one, proud of, but also two, like, are a requirement to go to the next level?
Man, that's a fun question. And like, I love talking about entrepreneurship because you have like the tactical side, but then you also have like the side that you're kind of inquiring about, which is like the personal development side. And you can't have one without the other. Like, you can't just be like a personal development person. You can't just be a tactical person. But on the personal development side, like, you just have to, we talked about the stress tolerance, right? So like, you have to, the best fighters can take punches, right? So we touched on that. Like, I've developed a skill set of like becoming someone who triages well. Like, I always use the analogy of like an army doctor, right? They got 3 people bleeding on the ground. That one's for sure going to die. That one's for sure going to live, but I can do the most good for this guy. I can save his life right here, right? Like, there's a lot of that as you scale a business, you have to develop that. I have a higher stress tolerance than I did 6 years ago. I would say another one is just sacrifice, right? Like, you get to a point where a business is to a certain level and you're making great money, and you have a decision to make where you can say, okay, I can plateau and just like kind of tune this up. But I feel like if you try that for too long, like you'll start to dip, right? So I've gotten in the habit of just making that blood sacrifice on the altar of business and reinvesting any profits back into the next thing. I feel like you have to stretch yourself and grow. Obviously, you can't over leverage yourself, or else you get in a bad spot. But with all of our profit, like, I had one guy he worked with me. He was running our operations. He's like, why don't you just like keep the profit instead of hiring all these people to find the next deal? Like, you could just have a really nice life. I was like, that's just not what we're doing here. Like, I'm not just trying to, make it by, or like take what I have and kind of bury that. I'm trying to scale an empire, and I'm not ashamed of that anymore. I'm ready to keep going and put everything that we have back into the furnace, So
I love it.
That's
it's so beautiful.
Has definitely like been a great experience the last 6 years, like you said.
That's huge. This is such a huge part of business scaling, as it is sort of different than real estate scaling in some ways. And that's this idea that I think it's really publicly fantasized that you're going to reach financial freedom by building a real estate empire. And your goal, like, there's this like proverbial idea. It's like this 10 grand, this 20 grand a month. And once I get there, I'm just going to like, I'm going to like be on the beach. It's going to be great. I'm going to surf all the time. It's going to be awesome. Right. Right. You're going to golf. I'm going to surf. It's going to be great. But the reality is that these assets are actually active businesses that demand active money. And I had for my previous business that I owned and operated for 15 years, one of the last things I did before I left that business was I got a mentor through a program, and he did, I was a 3rd generation in this family business. He was a 3rd generation in his. Mine was 45 years old. His was 140 years old. We did 3 million. He did 500 million. And we both did construction in San Francisco. So I really learned so much from this guy. And he said to me, he saw the way I was scaling, and he was like, too much, too fast. Too much, too fast. He's like, I get it. You're winning the biz. You're winning the projects. Like, you're winning the accounts. That's great. But you have no infrastructure to do this work. You don't. If you want to methodically scale a business, you scale by 3 to 5% a year. And what you do is you strategically pull that delta profit that you make more each year back into the business, so that your HR person turns into a HR person and like talent hiring, like it turns into 2 positions, and then that department turns into 3 positions, and then you're able to develop and open up a new department, and now you have a sexual harassment person that you can afford, right? Like whatever it is, right? And like he was talking so strategically and like the minutia of just like one hire at a time, allowing you to scale that next level in the next year of the business. But the most critical part of that was that you choose the salary that you can afford to live on, and everything else gets rolled back into the business. And most small business owners, this is why we can't get to 10 million. This is literally why, because you're pulling out your monthly profit, you're pulling out your K1 profit, and like it's gone. You're not reinvesting it into the business, into hires, into programs, into processes, into tech, into mentorship. And I really love that you said that, because we have this dream that we just have to do these 5 things, and then we don't have to try anymore as humans. We get to like tune out. And that is not this. I don't think it's ever been this. I think it's just people are talking about it like this right now for some reason. And even though these folks that reach their financial FI number or whatever it's called, like retire early, they become bored and they go back to work.
Yeah.
Because you can't just sit there on a beach with a Corona forever. You know, I mean, Landon's like, I don't know, I could, but
You play so much golf, Daniela. You don't even realize. No, I get it. I'm addicted to the game. I'm addicted. Like, it is so much fun to find the passion in what we're doing in our own individual spheres that are now colliding in what we're getting into, especially with Ben and whatnot. It's so inspiring to watch. But the addiction to the game and what we're doing and getting ready for the, like, genuinely, I'm so stoked for tomorrow to do this all over again. I mean, tomorrow's Thanksgiving, but you get like, I'm excited I'm not doing it tomorrow. Tomorrow is not that day, but Friday, I will wake up and do a lot of the same things over and over again to continue to build, because I love it. I love what we do, Daniela. It's so fun. It's so addicting, and we get to serve others and help others in what we do too, which is beautiful, and whatnot. So yeah, I'm glad we all align on that.
okay. So Ben, I'm curious. You developed, you converted, and your acquisition strategy now. You know, what is I think that's a big thing for folks that are starting out, right? How to build and fill a pipeline, like how to even have enough self-storage deals to underwrite so that you can identify a deal. And so how did you build your pipeline? What, you know, how are you finding your next acquisitions?
Yeah, great question. And before we move on, like, it sounds like that guy who your mentor, it sounds like he was reading Traction, right? Which is
that was one of his favorite books. Traction's a great book.
And that's kind of our Bible around here, is like, well, besides the real Bible, but is you know, it's a tactical book. If you haven't read it, like, it's not gonna like inspire you. It's not an inspirational, you know, character development book. It's a tactical book to organize your business. And so, like you were saying, Daniela, like, my role now is all about talent. So like, I have a problem where I can't let a talented person get away from me. Like, I have to figure out a way, whether it's profit sharing or equity, or like, I have to retain anyone I meet that like I want. It's like, I'll do anything I can to keep them around. And so your question was like about the, you know, how we're building a deal pipeline, how we're building our business out. We have the moving company, which is one business. We have the storage operations company, and then we have our big storage ventures, which is our private equity acquisitions, right? And so with my moving company, and this is a long answer, but I'll get to it. I scaled from the bottom up because at that time, money was more important to me than time. So I basically was in the business, on the moves, moving customers myself. And I slowly passed off like the lowest paid job until finally like I had the whole thing built out.
Mm.
With my storage company, it was the opposite. I scaled from the top down because at that point in time was more important to me than money. So instead of hiring like the person at the, not the bottom, but like the lowest paid job first, I hired the highest paid job first and had them help me build it out. So my best friend, Callan, he's the CEO of Big Storage Ventures. And so I kind of cut him in as a business partner, and we've been building everything from the top down since then. We have an awesome, it's not been like a smooth ride, but we have created systems and deal flow, and we've done a good job about just kind of doing a little bit of everything. We can get into like the specific tactics we do for deal finding, but we have, we have our VAs that turn data into leads. And then we have our Americans that once they're leads, they'll call it and like try to close the deal. And so that's, we have a lot of infrastructure within that, just as far as all off traction, like who accounts to who, what's the process, what's the next step. And quite honestly, like we're still building a lot of that out. If you look at like our org chart or our accountability chart for our moving company, which has been around longer, it's much more organized. We have more people. It's much more sophisticated. Like we're still in that adolescent phase on our Big Storage Ventures business, but it's a really fun place to be because you're in the thick of it still.
Okay. So that's so cool. So then you have graduated away from you personally being a part of acquisitions at all.
I'm still involved. My main job is to support the executives, right? So like I do a lot of, high level marketing, investor relations. Like once a deal gets past, it gets past our VA, gets past our kind of like acquisitions team, gets past our CEO, Callan, then it comes to me. So I'm still involved, but we have a machine that's kind of weeding out like bad deals that would suck my time if we didn't have that in place.
Okay. All right. I have another direct question about this, but I'm going to ask Landon if he has one so I don't dominate this conversation.
No, I love it. It was great. It's a great question. I've been taking notes this whole time. And what's cool is the way you bifurcated how you built your storage business differently than your moving business. I guess what predicated you to make that decision to go the opposite direction on that? I think it's beautiful. It makes me wonder if retroactively you would have built your storage business identical in terms of structure from the top down. Obviously at that time you were just rednecking it and just figuring it out as you go and like working your way through it. And I totally get it. I would do the same. And I've done the same thing with my wholesale business completely. I started out, I was the dude ripping. Yes. And fast forward today, like we're doing, 8 to 10 deals a month right now and more. And I'm not making a single phone call. And it's just graduated to where like I'm not doing anything as a part of it, other than talent and calibrations and whatnot. But and I wouldn't have done it any differently because I needed to know every step of the way. So I guess for you, what was the change as you got into storage? You said time was your biggest, I guess, marker. But for you, what was it, a mentor that you learned from to start at that level to work down, or what kind of got you there?
I think good question. I think it was just that when I was bootstrapping my moving company, I needed money more than time. Like I had the time to give and I needed the money to keep building that business. With the storage business, like I needed the time. So I had to delegate that and I had to pay to buy back my time. So that's the biggest difference. It's not to say that I've been on the front lines. I've done cold calls. I've driven for dollars, like driving to every storage facility in the state, and so it's not to say that I didn't do those things at first, but it was definitely more of scaling from the top down compared to, in the moving company, I was on the front lines for years, where on the storage facility, I couldn't afford it because I still have to take, time every week to support my moving company executives. I couldn't give my whole week to the storage business like I could when I was bootstrapping the moving company.
What I love what you said there too, and you touched on something that Danielle and I talk about quite often and work through. And the book's right here. Dan Martell, Buy Back Your Time. Danielle and I just sat down and listened to him. He did this private speech we got to watch. And
Lucky.
to build $1 million business is not built on $10 tasks. And so exactly what you're doing is you're getting rid of those things, rather delegating those tasks to other people so you can focus on building that $1 million, $10 million, $50 million, $100 million business that you're building and continuing to audit your world. But we're very much in that space too in terms of what we're doing. So I love hearing that. But go ahead, Daniela, your direct question. I'm looking forward to this one.
Good Lord in heaven. So it's this makes so much sense to me because and for folks that don't know that, again, like it's not a bad thing, but it's service-based businesses demand so much attention and time. You have to manage your employees. You have to make sure that the quality and care is there. You have to make sure that, clients are getting back to and estimates are getting out and all of these things are happening with a really, really timely fashion. There's scheduling, there's the trucks, there's the routes, there's the gas, there's all these things. And so as he's dipping his foot in self-storage, he's going, if I don't continue driving my moving business bus and I divert to this dies. And I'm sure you had infrastructure and people, but at the end of the day, like your absentee ownership for a service-based business that's still scaling is substantially challenging. So, and I would beg to differ that it's almost reckless if you're still scaling that business to be an absentee owner. So it makes sense to me that you go, okay, we're going to do this storage operations acquisitions thing, but I don't need to be a part of that in the same way, which you didn't, frankly. You needed to make sure this cash cow is still making cash so that you had the money to divert into those other investments when and if they became available. So rant over, but if you're
that's exactly right.
But with your acquisitions now, okay, and I know that this is the market that we're in, and I think it's not just self-storage. I think it's a lot of different stuff that we're seeing asset classes, commercial asset classes and residential as well, especially in commercial though, because of the rate reset in those commercial loan products and whatnot. But people are going, I want $2 million for a $1 million facility. And the books definitely don't support it. And I packed all my expenses into the book, so I show no profit. So this definitely can't get funded. And I've talked to investors in commercial in general across the board. And I'm going, as a broker trying to make matches, I'm a matchmaker. That's what I do. And I'm going, what do you need out of this self-storage facility? What do you need out of this vacant industrial facility? What do you need out of this to make it work for you? Because if it can't get funded and you have to raise all that scratch yourself, you have to make sure you can still support the debt. It doesn't matter if it's private debt or if it's institutional debt. If the facility doesn't make enough money or the rent coming into the industrial facility doesn't cover the debt, you're covering it. So when you are looking at facilities in this market today, what are some of the thresholds around that? I need this facility to be netting this post debt, or what does that look like for you?
And also, how has it evolved too?
Well, the biggest thing is, right, like you have to. There's two points I'll touch on. One is like, what metrics are you looking for in a deal, and the second one is like, really the key is seller psychology, right? So what we're looking for in a deal is you have to have something that, one, you can survive, right? Like a lot of times I'll tell sellers, like, look, I just got to be able to survive this. I'm not stupid money. And if you can find stupid money, like, why would you choose me, right? Like I have an obligation to make money with this thing. You know what I mean? So I think it's just being upfront with them and saying like, hey, the bank, like hopefully they'll do seller financing, which you could say, yeah, like you could do seller financing, or you can get us to a debt service coverage ratio of 1.25. So the bank can loan us. You know what I mean? It's like very, very simple as far as just what makes a deal feasible. And I think that's like the first step, right? Then it's, hey, because we have partners, we're the minority partner on every deal. So we have a big obligation to the people that are playing with us. And so we have deals that we could transact and we could make money and take a fee on. But it's like, if our investors aren't going to get the returns that we promise, it's like we walk from that deal as well. So I think the key is like realizing that there are deals out there. Like in every market cycle, there's deals out there. And I think a lot of times it's just getting to know them, getting to know their goals. Like this deal we just found this week, it's like he wasn't wanting to sell, and then his partners, he actually is a guy who's in a deal with his parents, and they're getting a divorce, and we were sad about that. But he's like I wouldn't be selling, but we needed to sell because of that, right? So I think you're trying to catch them at the right time, and I think that's why you never give up, because these guys get 1,000 calls a year. But if you catch them at the right time, we've had, I call them miracles, where it's just like, it was just the right time. And so I wouldn't ever give up. We found deals, like, I don't feel like any two deals we found have been the same. We found some through wholesalers, some through our VA, some through commercial brokers, some through social media. And so it's like just making sure that you are exhausting your efforts and not giving up, and being consistent is the name of the game right now when it comes to drumming up business and deals.
That's really great market today advice. We hear a lot about, I think right now in, on YouTube and social media, we're hearing a lot about the fruit from the COVID era fruit, which was like, no one ever makes that much fruit. No trees produce that much fruit. That was like a stamp in time that is now gone. And so will there be another event in the next decade? Of course. Will it be quite like that? Definitely not. I hope not. And so, but because of that, a lot of people were able to make really pointed and sometimes reckless investment decisions, and they just freaking worked. Yeah. Like they really did. They worked. And so thank you so much for sharing that. I think that, as folks are getting started, or I think the big thing is sometimes it's not so hard to get started. It's just really, really hard to keep going. It's really hard to keep going.
Oh, for sure. Like I think that consistency, that discipline, that resilience is what it's all about. Because at the end of the day, the people that keep fighting and keep going are the ones who are going to win. Like the only way to really fail is to quit in general, or quit learning and quit innovating. That's really the only way to lose. I think if you keep learning and keep trying, you will be a winner. I think just one last comment on that. You do have people that they got offers during COVID that they can't get out of their head, right? And so you can just explain to them, okay, if you'll give me a COVID interest rate, I can give you that price.
That's nice.
And the reality has a little bit of a lag, right? So the lag's different for everybody, depending on how desperate they are, right? And so someone who like they're sitting on it, they may not be ready to sell. That lag, they may never get that reality check. Like the market might catch up to COVID by the time that they get that reality check, and that's how it is. Other people, it's like their loan's expiring, or they have a life event, or they're just worn out. They built the deal thinking it would be one thing and it's another. Like those people are coming around, and they all have their own timeline. So you can't ever quit calling, because you're going to catch a new person every month, if you're calling enough people.
Yeah. What's interesting too is like what you touched on, a lot of the COVID era too, with what I'm doing, even Daniela, what we're doing primarily is a lot of the properties we're purchasing and wholesaling and keeping, whatever, is all COVID debt. So we're talking, I've seen some 1.98% rates up to 5% rates in that range all day long. It's pretty wild, man.
I know, isn't it crazy to think that now?
And it's crazy. But what's beautiful in our realm and what we're doing is that we're able to, they bought at that time with future pricing in mind. And many times that was either with a loan product like an FHA or VA on the residentials. We're getting hyper residential real quick here. And to where they didn't put anything down. They got down payment assistance, or they got, with the VA, they got their closing costs covered or whatever. And so they have no equity because prices stabilized or lowered and whatnot. So we're getting into these deals that they bought back 2 years ago for basically just their closing costs and some cash. And it's pretty fascinating how that era has shifted everything in the landscape and developed its own commodity in terms of the creative finance world and what we're doing. And now that's blending over for us in the self-storage and what we're looking at. A lot of the deals we're putting together are seller finance, or, we haven't dabbled too much, I'll be honest, in terms of doing some type of taking over as someone else's SBA. We haven't looked into that super deep personally. Moreover than seller finance is kind of the vehicle we're looking at. And then leveraging PMLs or PMPs, doing a GPLP type of relationship on the front end standpoint. When you guys are, I'm just curious, and you don't have to dig too deep into this, but I'm curious on the acquisition and disposition of your facilities. Are you guys, because I was just in a raising private capital event on Monday that they talked about it was primarily about funds as it relates, it doesn't matter what the vehicle is, but theirs is multifamily. And on the front end, they charge an acquisition fee, typically 15% of the acquisition, pretty heavy, but up to 15%, I should say. And then a disposition fee. I guess on your end, with your relationships and how you're structuring things, how are you still obtaining today money through it? Is there an acquisition fee? And then are you doing some type of disposition fee at the end, or how do you typically structure your facilities?
Yeah, so we do, we have our, I guess, unique terms that I think everyone's going to be a little different. I think before we even get in, I'll tell you our specific terms, but, I think it's important to understand the life cycle of terms when you're putting together deals, right? Like when you're putting together your first partnership, you might take pretty rough terms because it's like you don't have a resume, you don't have a track record, right? So I think your terms start at the low end and then they kind of slowly climb and get better. And then when you need to raise money at scale, they kind of trail off and you have to give better terms because you're trying to raise so much, right? So we're still in what we feel like is like adolescence. So our terms are still pretty reasonable. And there's lots of different levers you can pull. If someone asks us for more equity, sometimes we could say, okay, well, you can have more equity up front, but if we hit our goals, maybe we could do a waterfall where we get more equity after we pay you out plus X percent, right? So I think we do have an acquisition fee because we have a business to run. Like I feel like one thing that people miss is we have a team here. Like we have our VA team, and then we have our team here in America. That's like over $200,000 a year I'm spending just on salaries, just to make sure that everything is done right to keep our promises to people. And so those acquisition fees, we're not cash positive on them. We're cash negative on those acquisition fees, but we have one. And then on the disposition fee, we typically we'll own a pretty big, we're always the minority partner, but we'll take a lot of equity up front. And so we haven't thrown a disposition fee in yet, but we probably will as we get more experience and as we find deals with better terms, right? Like maybe someone pushes back on the equity and then you say, okay, but we're going to throw in a disposition fee for when we refinance or sell. So there's just different levers you can pull. The biggest priority for us is making sure that for our partners, that it's the best investment that they could find, that compared to another real estate investment or the stock market, we want to beat that. And then if we can beat that, we want to make sure that we carve out as much as we can for us and our teams so that we can keep growing our business and providing good deals to our partners.
Yeah.
Makes a ton of sense. And thank you for sharing that. That's, not everybody is willing to do that. And that it's, I think that understanding things on a granular level for people is there's always this curtain, right? And sometimes the curtain is a paywall. And sometimes the curtain is the mistake that you make when you do it without asking, or having enough humility to be able to ask somebody, what is the truth? And so the more people that we talk to that are commercial real estate investors, the more clients I have, and you get to know these folks. And I think my favorite thing to talk about, I mean, my absolute favorite thing to talk about is business, because all of these things, they're businesses. We like to trick ourselves into believing that there are the passive income vehicle that's going to free us from the whatever, but they are the 24/7 business that we never can really step away from. And we can, you build out your people and your things, and you can step away within reason. But, acquisitions, that is a machine. Like Landon, you and Chris, you guys have people to pay. You have systems you have to pay. You have to keep those lights on, or there are no deals to underwrite, are no purchase contracts to assign. There is no income, period. So, I always try to bring the real estate back to folks. Like, it doesn't matter if it's 2 single family rentals, long-term rentals. You should have P&Ls for your rentals. You should know, like, per property, how is this property really doing? Okay, great. The HVAC blew in this property. So guess what? This was a terrible year. I'm cash negative on this home this year. And you should be able to look at that home over the course of 5 years and go, do I dump this? And I think that is a thing that real estate investors have a really hard time with, because we're so obsessed with doors. It's like, oh, I want all these doors. I want all these assets. But at the end of the day, if your assets aren't performing, if you're not monitoring your business, you are leaving money on the table. Right. And so it's really cool to hear you talk about this on a tactical level, for sure.
100%. I think it's true that that's a big reality check that a guy like me, who was just kind of, shooting from the hip, like the wild, wild west, like about the same time I got into traction and started getting really organized with our accountability chart and everything, and running the business, like a traction business with annual goals and rocks, was about the same time I got serious about, like, okay, I need to take a look in the mirror and look at the financial statements every month, every week, even, like, check the bank account a couple times a week. You know what I mean? Just being aware. And I think it's like there's 2 parts to why people wouldn't, or at least for me. It's like, one, I'm busy, right? Like I have other business tasks to do. And I'm also I know I'm doing my best. I know I'm going to make good financial decisions. So if I trust myself and I'm making good principle-based decisions, it's not as important, right? You could tell yourself that. But I think it's also just looking in the mirror and just looking for your mistakes, being willing to face whatever your past mistakes were, so you can learn from it. So I feel like that's a good tip, and something that hopefully you can learn that lesson earlier in your business journey too.
Totally. So let's talk about, Ben. Let's talk about what you're doing now, or what you're creating now too. You have your moving company, you have your self-storage acquisition, your operations and whatnot. I'm interested on that standpoint too, and the bifurcation of that. But let's talk more about, you told me recently that you're starting up a coaching program. Maybe you can dive into that a little bit more, of like what that's going to look, rather what's the landscape going to look like in terms of things, and what you're hoping to accomplish with that, and your goal with that in terms of helping other investors get facilities.
Yeah, great question. And you kind of brought up, Daniela, just how, like, a lot of times to get the information, there's a paywall, right? And so I kind of pride myself in being really approachable. I feel like that's something that I want people to always feel like they can call me up without like having to pay, and like we can network, and just like, I feel like if you give value, you're going to get it back somehow. So I still like to be pretty approachable and, offer help for free, but we are going to start a community. We're going to call it the Big Store Adventures Playbook. And basically we're actually going to do a Black Friday sale 2 days from now.
That's so cool.
It's already like going to be the most affordable storage course and mentorship available, but we're going to give it for half off. And the real reason is just to have it all in one place. Like someone could hop on a call with me and I would give them all the, answers to their questions, but to have it all in one place where people can go through it and have access to it. And then we get on coaching calls. That's kind of what we want to carve out time for and set aside our resources for. So that's we're going to drop it January 1st. It's going to be like all through 2025. We're going to do coaching calls and have people go through the course, but we're doing our Black Friday sale. And I think the real mission behind it is kind of where we started. Like this asset class, I'm nothing special. Like it really got me my first big 7 figures. Like it got me my first chunk of wealth that, yes, I've reinvested it back into our businesses, but I want that for the people around me. Like one of the things about me is I have my family in a lot of deals, which can be nerve-wracking, right? But if I believe in it, why would I not want them to come participate in it as well? And it's pretty special. Like we have this Salt Lake City deal who we're debating if we want to sell it or not, but we just got offered stupid money. And my little brother and my in-laws are both on the deal. And just the amount of like pride and joy that you feel when you're like, okay, this actually worked. Like I took that leap of faith. I took probably like the only investment savings that my little brother and my in-laws had, put it in a deal. And now we just got our stupidest offer we've ever gotten on a storage facility. And so we don't know if we'll take it or not, but that's the mission, is like that there is no fixed mindset about this. Like there's plenty to go around. We're in the golden age of self-storage. Like I want as many people to own storage units and have the same financial wealth creation that I've experienced. And so that's kind of the next phase of our business, is just creating a community people can come and grow with us.
That's beautiful, man. And those communities are critical too, because they take a lot of effort and time on your end, especially with what you got going on. For you to, I've always believed, and I know you do too, is serving others and reaching back and helping what you've learned and sharing with others, much like what Danielle and I both do within our private communities and whatnot. But there is a paywall, like to get into those smaller rooms, like it's part of it, man. Like it's just part of getting into those smaller communities to get uninterrupted time with you. I love that how approachable you. I mean, that's how we're talking right now, is that you were approachable. I DM'd you here a few months back or a couple months back just to get to know you and be around you, because you have an infectious personality and how much you do give and how smart you are in terms of what you've done and all the things. But to be a part of a community like yours is getting access to someone who has done everything in terms of development, conversions, acquisitions, building out other businesses, services businesses. So you're not just getting like how to buy your first facility. You're getting how to scale, how to operate, and all the things. And you 100% should monetize that in terms of getting people around you. And it's beautiful. I love hearing that. That's exciting, and I'm sure you guys are going to murder. And then also too, you're going to create this community of people who are doing deals with each other and sharing deals to the community. And so you can buy deals from your students, if you will, and they can buy deals from you that you can propose to your team. And so it's just it's just collaborative. That's how it should be. It's not just this, look at me, I'm the guy. It's like, no, let's get in here and talk about this together. And that's really cool.
Yeah.
So
thanks. Go ahead.
Where can people find this if they want to join? Where can they find it?
Yeah, we're going to be dropping it. Go to the Big Storage Ventures Instagram. That's the place we're going to be dropping everything. We have a Facebook and TikTok too, but the Instagram's like the best way to get a hold of us. Also, you could just email bigstorageventures@gmail.com. But yeah, follow us on Instagram and then we'll get you signed up on the website. We're going to be rolling out here. So it's all happening in real time. Thanks.
I love it. Of course, dude. Yeah, no, it's super exciting. I love what you're doing, and not only your story, but also how you carry yourself, and you're doing it the right way. And it's really fun to watch, and it's super inspiring for both Danielle and I as we're tiptoeing our way into this thing and whatnot. We made the decision here in mid-July of this year that this was the vehicle that we're gonna devote ourselves to and building and whatnot. And so being around killers like yourself, it's exciting, super fun. So we're grateful to have you on the podcast.
Well, you guys have a high frequency, I think you guys both individually have a high frequency, but together, I think you guys really complement each other. So look out, honestly.
Let's go.
Because,
I hope so.
I'm going to be.
We just want one. We just let us have one. We were under contract. We were under contract a week ago or two with a facility in Idaho. I think I told you this.
Yeah, you did.
Unfortunately, the P&Ls showed a lot of things that, including vitamins and health insurance of things that she was buying and whatnot. And so the valuation just wasn't there on things. And so we had to counter, and it just didn't work out. And unfortunately, we had to cancel the deal. It may come back in the future. Mike Van Maren is asking, is big storage ventures. Mike, he's asking, it doesn't show up on Insta. Maybe I can drop the link in the comments. I don't know.
Yeah, Big Storage Ventures is the Instagram.
Yeah. But yeah, we just fell out of contract on that one. We learned so many lessons along the way in the process. It's part of it. Super exciting to get there and do the thing. But yeah, so our goal was to get a facility under contract before the end of the year and hopefully close it. But we got it under contract, and then who knows, it may come back. So we'll see.
No, we have it happen. It's hard. We close on most of the facilities we put under contract, we've closed on, but when you find something like that, it's heartbreaking because you really want to deliver for you and your partners, but you also want to just do the right thing. You don't want to put something under contract you don't intend to close on. Yeah. But guess what? At the same time, what's the line? And if you go into a deal knowing that maybe it's a fixer upper, right? You don't have the right to retrade if you knew.
Right.
But if you go into it and then they presented it as perfect, and then you go into it and say, hey, we asked you about this, you did not disclose that, or you didn't tell us this, and it's pretty obvious, then you really can't feel bad. You gave your best foot forward with what information and knowledge you had.
Exactly. Yep. And so all things that I'm sure you guys deal with this and you talk to your team about this all the time in your active service-based business, in your storage business, in your fund, private equity, it's a rep. You have to always be doing the thing so that you can spot the deal and you can pivot and you can borrow the money and you can get funded and you have what it takes to push that deal forward. And so I hope everybody here took a lot. There's so much good information in here just about how to start a business, how to hold a business, how to stabilize a business, and how to pivot in business. And that's really what all this is about. Don't forget, guys, real estate's a business. And Ben, I'm so grateful for your time today. It was so amazing to get to meet you. I hope you have a super happy Thanksgiving with your family this week.
Yeah, happy Thanksgiving to you too, and anyone listening. You guys, I hope we can do business together, and I hope to meet you in person sometime. You guys are both a lot of fun to get to know and also learn from and talk business with.
Awesome, Ben. Thank you.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving.